Start cooking a stew for 15 minutes on your stove, then transfer the pot to an insulated box, close the lid, and walk away for 4 hours. When you return, the stew is fully cooked, tender, and hot, despite using zero additional fuel after those initial minutes. That's the Haybox cooker, a technology developed in 19th century Europe that reduced cooking fuel consumption by 70 to 90% for slow-cooked meals while producing excellent results that many cooks consider superior to conventional stovetop cooking. The principle works through simple physics. Once food reaches cooking temperature, the heat required to maintain that temperature for extended cooking is minimal if the pot is adequately insulated to prevent heat loss. Traditional hay boxes used straw, sawdust, or other natural insulation to surround a hot pot, maintaining cooking temperatures for hours without additional fuel input. Modern versions use high-performance insulation materials, achieving even better thermal retention while providing more compact and convenient configurations. The technology addresses fuel poverty challenges globally while providing convenience and energy savings for households anywhere seeking to reduce cooking energy consumption. Understanding how Haybox cooking works, what foods suit the approach, and how to apply the technique effectively helps modern cooks capture substantial energy savings while potentially improving cooking outcomes for appropriate dishes. The basic physics of Haybox cooking exploits the fact that foods continue cooking at temperatures well below boiling. Most slow-cooked dishes require internal temperatures of 150 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. For adequate cooking, temperatures that heat-retaining pots maintain for hours when properly insulated. The initial cooking on a conventional stove brings food to full cooking temperature and provides the heat reservoir that continued cooking requires. The insulation then prevents heat loss that would require continuous fuel input on a conventional stove. The physics work reliably across diverse foods, including beans, grains, stews, soups, casseroles, and rice, provided the insulation performs adequately and the initial heating achieves proper starting conditions. The insulation performance requirements for effective Haybox cooking determine whether installations produce successful cooking outcomes. The pot must retain temperatures above minimum cooking thresholds across the intended cooking duration, typically 3 to 8 hours for most applications. The insulation thickness, material properties, and construction details all affect retention performance. Traditional hay boxes used 6 to 10 inches of straw or similar materials, providing adequate retention for most applications. Modern versions using fiberglass, cellulose, or specialized insulation materials can achieve equivalent performance in more compact packages. The insulation selection must match intended application requirements for reliable cooking outcomes. The historical development of Haybox cooking traces back to late 1800s Germany and Scandinavia, where innovative homemakers developed the approach to reduce fuel consumption during difficult economic conditions. The technology spread rapidly across Europe during World War I and World War II, when fuel rationing made efficient cooking approaches essential. Post-war decline in adoption followed increasing fuel availability that reduced motivation for efficiency-focused cooking. Contemporary revival interest has emerged from multiple directions, including sustainability concerns, off-grid cooking applications, and appreciation for the superior texture and flavor that slow cooking produces in many dishes. Dr. Ingeborg Haagensen Olsen, a Scandinavian food scientist who has researched traditional cooking methods and their contemporary applications for over 25 years, has documented the nutritional and culinary benefits alongside the energy efficiency advantages of Haybox cooking. Her comparative studies show that slow-cooked foods prepared in hayboxes retain more heat-sensitive nutrients than equivalent foods cooked at higher temperatures, while producing textures and flavors that many tasters prefer. The combined advantages beyond pure energy efficiency make haybox cooking attractive for reasons that transcend purely utilitarian considerations about fuel consumption. The foods that suit haybox cooking span most slow-cooked dishes from traditional cooking traditions worldwide. Beans, grains, stews, soups, and casseroles all work excellently with the approach. Rice cooks perfectly in hayboxes with proper water ratios and timing. Traditional Jewish cholent, French cassoulet, Italian minestrone, and countless other dishes from diverse cooking traditions fit the haybox approach naturally. The compatibility with traditional slow-cooked dishes reflects how the approach essentially replicates traditional fireplace or hearth cooking, where slow heat retention was traditional rather than exceptional. The construction approaches for contemporary haybox cookers range from simple DIY projects to commercial products offering refined performance. DIY approaches using insulated coolers, sleeping bags, or custom-built wooden boxes filled with insulation provide accessible entry points for interested cooks. Commercial products including specialized cooking bags, thermal cookers, and haybox inserts offer convenient purchase alternatives with designed performance characteristics. The construction complexity scales with performance requirements and user preferences. Most applications work well with relatively simple constructions that motivated homeowners can complete for under $50 in materials. Maribel Santiago Cuevas, a food writer and traditional cooking educator based in Oaxaca, Mexico, has integrated haybox cooking into her teaching of traditional Mexican slow-cooked dishes. Her workshops demonstrate that traditional Mexican cooking techniques, including beans, moles, and stews, adapt beautifully to haybox methodology while reducing cooking fuel consumption substantially. The integration honors traditional cooking approaches while addressing contemporary sustainability concerns. The teaching demonstrates how haybox cooking fits within diverse culinary traditions rather than being limited to specific cultural contexts. The energy savings from regular haybox cooking accumulate substantially across typical household cooking patterns. Households that would otherwise run stove burners for 2 to 4 hours daily for slow cooking applications can reduce active cooking time to 15 to 30 minutes daily, producing 80 to 90% reductions in cooking fuel consumption for applicable meals. Annual savings of $100 to $250 in cooking fuel costs are typical for households adopting the approach regularly. The continued savings across indefinite use periods accumulate substantially despite the modest initial investment in haybox equipment or DIY construction. Now for the obstacles and limitations that affect haybox cooking applications. First, the planning requirements for haybox cooking exceed what many contemporary cooking patterns accommodate. The approach requires starting cooking hours before meals, rather than the immediate cooking that conventional stoves permit. Users must plan meals in advance to allow adequate haybox cooking time. The planning constraint affects whether the approach fits into contemporary lifestyles where meal decisions often occur within hours rather than days of eating. Second, the food type limitations restrict applications to slow-cooked dishes rather than all cooking needs. Quick cooking foods, including sautés, stir-fries, grilled items, and similar preparations don't benefit from haybox approaches. Foods requiring browning or caramelization at high temperatures don't work in haybox applications. The limitations mean hayboxes supplement rather than replace conventional cooking equipment. For most households, though the savings on applicable dishes can still be substantial. Third, the temperature monitoring challenges for food safety require attention. Foods must maintain temperatures above 140 degrees Fahrenheit throughout cooking to avoid bacterial growth in the danger zone. Inadequate insulation or incorrect initial heating could allow temperatures to drop below safe thresholds before cooking completes. Proper cooking practices, including appropriate initial temperatures, adequate insulation, and sensible cooking, Durations avoid food safety concerns that inappropriate applications could create. Fourth, the space requirements for hay box storage affect kitchen organization in smaller homes. Contemporary hay box cookers typically occupy substantial counter or floor space that small kitchens may not accommodate easily. Seasonal storage when hay boxes aren't in active use requires dedicated space. The space considerations affect whether the approach fits into specific household circumstances. Fifth, the initial learning curve for successful hay box cooking requires patience and iteration. First attempts may produce disappointing results through underheating before hay box transfer, inadequate insulation, or unrealistic time expectations. Developing proficiency typically requires 5 to 10 cooking attempts across varied dishes before consistent results become reliable. The learning investment may discourage casual experimenters who abandon the approach before developing adequate skill. Despite these considerations, hay box cooking represents remarkable combination of energy efficiency, cooking quality, and cultural continuity that deserves broader contemporary recognition and adoption. The specific applications that showcase hay box cooking advantages include dry bean cooking, where the technique produces particularly tender and flavorful results, grain cooking for rice and similar grains where hay box methods produce perfect texture without attention, stock, and broth making where long, gentle simmering extracts maximum flavor from ingredients, and meat braising where tough cuts tenderize through extended low-temperature cooking that hay boxes provide efficiently. These applications highlight the culinary advantages alongside the energy savings. The global humanitarian applications of hay box cooking address fuel poverty in developing regions where cooking fuel costs represent substantial household expenses. Non-profit organizations distribute hay box equivalents to households in fuel-scarce regions, reducing both family expenses and environmental impacts from deforestation driven by cooking fuel demands. The humanitarian applications produce substantial benefits beyond individual household economics by addressing broader environmental and social issues connected to cooking fuel consumption. Njeri Kamau Muthoni, a development worker managing cook stove distribution programs across rural Kenya, has documented how hay box adjuncts to improved cook stoves multiply their fuel efficiency benefits in participating households. Her program data shows that combined improved cook stove and hay box adoption reduces household cooking fuel consumption by 60 to 80% compared to traditional three-stone fires, representing substantial improvement in both economic and environmental outcomes. The combined approach addresses fuel poverty effectively at scales that individual technologies alone cannot match. The program experience validates integrated approaches that leverage complementary technologies for maximum benefit. The environmental implications of widespread hay box adoption extend beyond individual household energy savings. Global cooking accounts for substantial portions of household energy consumption and associated emissions, with hay box adoption capable of reducing these impacts meaningfully at aggregate scales. The approach particularly benefits populations dependent on biomass cooking fuels, where reduced fuel consumption reduces deforestation pressures and indoor air pollution exposure. The environmental dimensions make hay box promotion a legitimate sustainability strategy deserving broader attention from policymakers, nonprofits, and individual advocates. The contemporary commercial products adapting hay box principles to modern kitchens include thermal cookers, insulated cooking pots, slow cookers with enhanced insulation, and specialized cooking bags. The product diversity provides options for households at various price points and configuration preferences. Japanese thermal cookers particularly have reached sophisticated design levels with excellent performance and kitchen-friendly configurations. European manufacturers produce high-quality thermal cookers that perform excellently at premium prices. The product availability supports adoption across diverse household circumstances and preferences. Haruko Nishimura Tanaka, a Japanese home economist who has researched traditional cooking methods and developed educational programs for contemporary kitchens, has helped popularize thermal cooker adoption across Japanese households. Her educational materials explain how thermal cookers fit into contemporary cooking patterns while delivering substantial energy savings and cooking quality benefits. Japanese adoption patterns demonstrate that thermal cookers can become mainstream kitchen equipment, rather than specialty items, with cultural acceptance producing widespread integration into daily cooking practice. The Japanese example provides template for how other regions might similarly integrate thermal cooking technology. The educational applications of Haybox cooking in sustainability and home economics education demonstrate energy principles through hands-on activities. School programs teaching energy efficiency can include Haybox demonstrations that make abstract thermal principles concrete through cooking experiments. Adult education programs focused on household sustainability include Haybox cooking as accessible skill with immediate applicability. Community workshops teaching both cooking and energy efficiency integrate Haybox methods with broader curriculum addressing sustainable household practices. The educational applications contribute to broader awareness and adoption beyond what direct product marketing could achieve. The psychological and cultural dimensions of Haybox cooking connect with contemporary interest in slow food movements, traditional cooking revival, and mindful consumption practices. The deliberate planning required for Haybox cooking contrasts with fast-paced contemporary cooking cultures, offering reflective engagement with food preparation that many cooks find satisfying. The connection with traditional methods honors heritage while addressing contemporary sustainability concerns. The cultural dimensions matter to adopters in ways that energy savings alone cannot fully capture. The technical optimization of Haybox performance through careful attention to pot selection, initial heating protocols, and insulation configuration separates excellent results from mediocre outcomes. Heavy cast iron or enameled steel pots retain heat better than thin aluminum, extending effective cooking duration and improving results consistency. Tight-fitting lids that seal steam and heat matter more than many users initially appreciate. Bringing food to full cooking temperature and holding it there for 10 to 20 minutes before Haybox transfer ensures adequate starting thermal energy to complete cooking during the unattended phase. Filling pots to appropriate levels, typically 70 to 90% of capacity, maintains thermal mass that supports extended cooking while avoiding overfilling that could cause boil-over during initial heating. These optimization details accumulate into substantial performance differences between well-executed applications and mediocre ones. Cooks who invest modest attention in optimization routinely achieve cooking outcomes that exceed what conventional stovetop cooking produces. Rashid Ibrahim Mensa, a sustainable cooking consultant based in Accra, Ghana, who has worked with cooking technology distribution programs across West Africa, has documented how regional adaptation of Haybox principles using locally available insulation materials produces effective cooking solutions tailored to specific contexts. His documentation shows Hayboxes using dried grasses, coconut coir, rice hulls, and other regionally abundant materials achieving performance equivalent to commercial thermal cookers at fractions of their costs. The regional adaptation honors traditional knowledge while applying universal physical principles, producing solutions that communities can construct and maintain independently without dependence on imported products. The approach demonstrates how universal physical principles translate into locally appropriate implementations that serve specific contexts excellently. The integration of Haybox cooking with solar cooking approaches produces particularly effective combined systems that maximize renewable cooking capacity. Solar cookers bring food to cooking temperature using free solar energy, after which hay box retention completes cooking without additional inputs. The combination addresses solar cooker limitations around cloudy weather and evening cooking by shifting completion phases into hay box environments that continue working regardless of solar availability. Households adopting combined solar plus hay box cooking can achieve 90+% reductions in cooking fuel consumption across favorable climate regions, approaching carbon-free cooking outcomes that would be difficult to achieve through either technology alone. The thermodynamic efficiency of hay box cooking exceeds what casual observers typically appreciate when viewed from fundamental energy perspectives. Conventional cooking wastes substantial energy heating air, stove surfaces, kitchen environments, and cooking equipment beyond what food actually requires. Hay box approaches concentrate energy where it matters, within the food itself, while preventing losses that conventional cooking accepts as inevitable. The efficiency differential of 3 to 10 times depending on dishes and duration represents dramatic improvement over conventional approaches, demonstrating that substantial efficiency gains remain accessible through low-technology interventions that require no exotic materials or sophisticated manufacturing. The broader implications for cooking technology development suggest that efficiency improvements may follow paths different from what contemporary product development typically pursues. Rather than adding features and complexity to existing appliance categories, efficiency gains may come from fundamentally reconsidering how cooking happens and what energy flows actually matter. Hay box cooking represents one example of this alternative pathway, achieving dramatic efficiency gains through elegantly simple physics rather than sophisticated engineering. The lesson applies broadly to sustainability technology development, where the most effective solutions sometimes emerge from first principles reconsideration rather than incremental improvements to established approaches. The pandemic era demonstrated accelerated interest in home cooking, traditional food, preparation methods, and self-sufficiency skills that supports hay box cooking revival. Households spending more time at home discovered rewards in extended cooking projects that hay box methods facilitate. The connection between preparedness, sustainability, and culinary satisfaction created receptive context for hay box adoption that hadn't existed during previous decades of fast-paced convenience orientation. Workshops, online tutorials, and community sharing of hay box cooking experiences expanded. During this period, creating knowledge bases and peer networks that support continued adoption momentum. The economic case for hay box adoption varies substantially based on household cooking patterns, local fuel costs, and initial investment choices. Households cooking slow-cooked dishes several times weekly with electricity or gas costing average rates can recover modest $30 to $80 DIY hay box investments within 6 to 18 months through cooking fuel savings. Commercial thermal cookers costing $100 to $300 extend payback periods modestly while providing refined performance and convenience. The economic returns beyond payback continue indefinitely, with essentially no operating costs and minimal maintenance requirements. The lifetime economic performance of hay box cooking rivals most household efficiency investments despite receiving far less attention from efficiency advocates and programs. The safety track record of hay box cooking across more than a century of documented use demonstrates the approach's fundamental reliability when applied with appropriate attention to basic principles. Historical records from wartime Europe, where hay boxes fed millions of households under challenging conditions, show no pattern of food safety problems when users followed simple guidelines about adequate initial heating and sensible cooking durations. Contemporary thermal cooker products serving millions of households across Asia, Europe, and increasingly North America show similarly strong safety records. The accumulated experience demonstrates that haybox cooking poses no unusual risks when users apply reasonable judgment, with food safety comparable to conventional slow cooking approaches that no contemporary cook would consider controversial. Elena Kostadinova-Petrova, a Bulgarian folk cooking historian who has documented traditional Balkan cooking methods across 40 years of field research, has chronicled how haybox principles integrated into traditional cooking practices across rural Bulgaria, Romania, and neighboring regions long before German formal systematization of the approach in the 1890s. Her documentation shows peasant households wrapping cooking pots in blankets, burying them in hay piles, or placing them in wooden chests filled with straw to continue cooking while families worked fields or attended other tasks. The traditional practices reflect practical wisdom that preceded formal scientific understanding, demonstrating how effective cooking approaches emerge from lived experience across generations of attentive practice. The historical depth honors traditional knowledge while validating contemporary applications. The material science considerations for insulation performance in haybox applications connect with broader insulation knowledge that applies across many energy efficiency contexts. Thermal conductivity values determine how effectively materials resist heat flow, with lower values producing better retention. Material density, moisture content, and fiber structure all affect performance characteristics. Common effective materials include straw, sawdust, wool, feathers, polystyrene, cellulose, and specialized cooking bag insulations. The material selection flexibility allows hayboxes to work with diverse, regionally available options, avoiding dependence on specific materials that might not be accessible in all contexts. The adaptability contributes significantly to the technology's global applicability. Consider what haybox cooking means for contemporary households interested in energy efficiency, traditional cooking, or off-grid cooking capability. The dramatic energy savings of 80 to 90% for applicable meals produce meaningful reductions in cooking energy consumption across indefinite operational periods. The excellent cooking quality for slow-cooked dishes often exceeds what conventional stove-top cooking produces, adding culinary rewards to the energy benefits. The accessibility through both DIY construction and commercial products accommodates diverse household circumstances. The compatibility with traditional cooking across diverse culinary heritages supports cultural continuity. The humanitarian applications in developing regions address fuel poverty while reducing environmental impacts. The educational value in sustainability teaching demonstrates principles through concrete practice. The psychological satisfaction of deliberate cooking connects with contemporary slow food interests. The question isn't whether haybox cooking deserves consideration in contemporary households. The question is why more households haven't explored this proven approach that delivers multiple benefits through relatively modest adoption efforts. The answers typically involve awareness gaps and inertia, rather than genuine obstacles to successful integration. For any household interested in reducing cooking energy consumption, exploring traditional cooking methods, or preparing for off-grid cooking capability, haybox cooking represents accessible and rewarding approach worth practical experimentation.